everybody to Go Country Writers. I am Margie E. Webb, Director of Speaker Programs. I'm pleased to have here today James Latoya. But before I welcome him, let me tell you about our next meetings, our next speaker meetings. We meet every Wednesday here at Go Country Writers. Third Wednesdays are our speaker meetings. In June 15th, we have Joan talking about Spice Up Your Writing with Sensory Details. Joan Griffin is one of our members, and there she is. Hey, Joan. It's a writing workshop, so bring your pen and paper or your laptop. Okay. And I'm excited to announce in July 20th, we have Deidre Walnut talking about how to succeed at anything. Deidre is the oldest woman to climb El Capitan, first at the age of 66 and then at the age of 70. Her son is the famous Alex Honnold in Free Solo, the Oscar-winning documentary. And they were interviewed last year by Anderson Cooper in November, so that was exciting to see. Okay, so great speakers coming up, but great speakers here today. All right. So Go Country Writers is pleased to welcome James Latoya. James uses his 29 years behind bars as an influence in his novels, short stories, and screenplays. He is a former associate warden in a maximum security prison, a hostage negotiator, facility captain, and director of California's state parole system. He is a nationally recognized expert witness on prison and jail operations. James has been nominated for the Silver Falchion Award for Best Procedural Mystery and the Bill Crider Award for Short Fiction. His published novels, at the table in the back, include At What Cost, Bury the Past, Little River, The Other Side of Paradise, and Black Label. His short stories are published in several crime anthologies. A frequent presenter at conferences and other events, he recently participated on panels at Left Coast Crime, Placerville Shakespeare Club, Authors Day, and Capital Crimes Killer Workshop. His new thriller, Drop Dead, a Nathan Parker detective novel, will be out this summer with a book signing at Face in the Book in July, right?
That's right.
All right. And he can also be spotted with his wife, Anne-Marie, and their therapy corgis, Emma and Bren, as part of the Read to the Dog program for children. Very cute dogs. And to sign up for his Prison to the Page newsletter, visit his website, JamesLetoile.com. He is presenting Exploring Character. Let's welcome James Latoya.
Well, thank you, Margie. Appreciate that. And thanks for Go Country Writers for having me back again. I guess things went well last time, so here I am again. When we were preparing for this, Margie and I were talking about what the club would really like to see, and I think one of the most difficult things to capture in a novel is character. So we talked a little bit about that, and character was what we settled on, and it's how you do that and how you present that in your novels that really make a difference. So rather than spend more time talking about me and my background, I think Margie did a great job there. I do use a lot of those experiences from working in prison for my characters in my books, naturally. When you spend time with, the Hillside Strangler, the Onion Field Killers, and the Zebra Killers, some of that rubs off. But it's been in a good way this time, because now some of those characteristics and traits, are stuck in your mind, and you can use those in your books as you go forward. So we hear people talk, especially in the publishing industry, about creating well-developed characters and what that really means. The industry demands a well-developed character with character-driven plot lines. But what does that really mean to us as authors to do that? I want to begin by saying every author that I know has their own process and their own way of finding that. What I'm going to try to do today is give you some ideas of a few different methods to develop character. Some of these I use and some I've looked at and they're just not for me, but other people love them. But one of the major reasons that manuscripts end up on the rejection pile from agents and editors is a lack of a developed character. So I think we can do that. Now, we're going to have I'm going to try to cram a lot of material in here today. Don't worry about taking too many notes. I'll have the slides for you as a PDF. I can mail those to you. So you can look at them at your own leisure. And you can kind of go through there and figure out what works for you. So why all the interest on characters? Character is really kind of the glue that holds things together. It's central to every story we tell. The character really makes us care about the book. Rachel Housel Hall is an author, and she and I were teaching at Book Passage a couple of years ago. And she started off a session on character development, and her question to the audience was, what makes me care? Tell me about your book. And she went around the room, and it was kind of an eye-opener. You know, then she'd give everybody about 15 seconds to tell me about your book. And they would give their little spiel, and she'd just cut them off. I don't care. And you'd go to the next person. I don't care. So it made the authors think, well, what is it I need to drill down to make people care about the story I'm trying to tell and the characters that are going to inhabit that book that you're going to live with for, at least a year while you're writing it. But it's kind of an important thing, because without it, you're going to end up with very flat characters. They won't have any depth. They'll be very surface, almost cartoonish. And you really won't get any reader's interest, and the book will just get passed if you're lucky enough to get it published. So naturally, there's a public service announcement. Again, you have to find the process that works for you. Everybody's different. And authors, myself included, get a little preachy about their process. And when you hear about somebody talking about this is the only way to do it, or the only way to write, or the only way to structure, or develop plot, that works for them. You have to find what works for you. In terms of plotters or pantsers, I've been excommunicated from the Church of the One True Plot because I couldn't adhere to structure. And then the patchouli oil smelling, pantser commune didn't want me there either because I needed a little bit more structure than they were willing to offer. So they burned sage on the way out and I did my own thing. So you do have to find what works for you. Don't force feed it, but find the process that you're most comfortable with. Character is so important that readers will forgive you for a bad plot. They will overlook a very so-so kind of plot holy kind of thing if the characters stand out and make them pay attention. Compelling characters might be the thing that grabs an agent or an editor's attention. So that alone should give you reason to pay attention to that. Readers have said they've stuck with a so-so plot in the book because they were really invested in what happens to that character. They want to find out what happens. And it's important because this is a shameless plug, and I'll admit it. Because you want the readers and reviewers to take a look at your work, and this is a blurb that's coming out for Dead Drop. Crisp pacing and well-developed characters make the 12 a must-read for every thrill enthusiast. And that kind of felt good to see, but it's that important. That's some of the things that people look for right away. Now, there are 3 examples I'm gonna bring you They're classic books, but they were all made into movies, and I want to use the movies as an example because we've all seen them at one point or another, why character is so important and what that does to us. So these three characters really kind of make you forget about the plot altogether, and you're so focused on their lives and what that story was for them. So we'll start with Taxi Driver with Travis Bickle. Now, the movie was Robert De Niro, and just this very violent kind of a story, but his character traits and character was, a very damaged Vietnam veteran coming back home. He's an insomniac. He takes up taxi driving at night just to kind of, distract himself from his self-loathing and self-destructive behavior. But the book and the movie is all about his downward spiral, his journey into basically madness. And he's waiting to explode and is looking for a target. So I think if you saw the movie or the book, you can identify that character right away. But anybody really remember what the plot of the book was? No. I mean, Bickle was jilted by a campaign manager of a senator in New York. So he was going to kill the senator. But that's when the young teenage prostitute, who was Jodie Foster at the time, came on the scene, and he focused on her and her pimp and that kind of thing. But nobody really remembers that, but they remember Travis Bickle and Robert De Niro. The next one, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Casey. Well, Jack Nicholson kind of took that over. His character was a fun-loving, narcissistic, manipulative guy, anti-authority figure, and really set himself up as a foil for Nurse Ratched, and in that story, there was another patient who committed suicide after Ratched kind of forced him into it or convinced him into it, and McMurtry snapped. Nicholson's character snapped at that point, and then he ended up dying in the movie. But his portrayal of that character, does anybody remember why he was in that mental institution? He was for rape. So he's not a nice guy. But in this environment, he came across as a different kind of individual and was kind of the everyman in that group. So it's kind of a strange juxtaposition. And more importantly, this story, does anybody remember whose point of view the story was actually told in?
The Indian.
That's right, Bromden, Big Chief, who's in the back of the picture there. And there we go. And I told Margie before that I got a PowerPoint clicker here, and it was marketed on Amazon as a PowerPoint clicker and cat toy. And I think one of the all-time examples of character in a book or a movie is Hannibal Lecter. Hannibal and Clarice and their relationship, dominated that book and the movie. He's a game player, he's manipulative, he's a schemer, and he can't just tell Clarice what she wants to know. Everything has to turn into this quid pro quo. He's brilliant, he's manipulative, but he's such a contradiction. He's got so many things going on. He's intelligent, but he's brutal. He knows all the things that the psychiatrists are trying to teach him or get him on. And it's one of the things that makes him a prolific murderer. He's superior to others, but somehow believes Clarice is somehow his equal. But their relationship on screen and in the book kind of took over everything, because the plot of the movie and the book was really the pursuit for Buffalo Bill and the serial killer. It puts the lotion on its skin and the guy in the well. So that's kind of some examples of what great character can do for your story. But how did they do that? And I've got a few ideas that I'm going to try to share with you, a few methods and tools that you can take away. But my favorite question is it character-driven or plot-driven? And now, how many of you here consider yourself plotters? Fancers? Okay, about split. I apologize to the plotters out here, but I'm about ready to give you a seizure. There's a difference between plot and story. Jane Friedman, I don't know if you follow any of her stuff. She's a really good resource for you if you're not. She recently had something on her blog about the difference between plot and story. Plot is everything external that impacts the story, the character. You're robbing a bank. It's you're looking for getaway drivers. All those external things in your plot that kind of move things along. The story is the internal things that move your character. So it's those emotions, that emotional baggage that the character's taking along with it. That's the story. So it's kind of a different way of thinking about it. But when you start talking about having a compelling story, you're really talking about taking that character on an arc, a journey, that there is some transformation and something happens to that character. And it's not just this flat portrayal. Even Jack Reacher, in the Lee Child series, has some transformation. It's not much, but there's some in there. So, you need to find a method that matches your writing style. And I've just put 5 up here. There's probably dozens of them out there if you want to go look. But I'll give you an example and walk through a couple of these. And the last 2 we'll kind of spend more time on because I think, at least from my experience, those are the 2 that are most valuable for me. I don't even mention the archetypes, where you plop stock characters on the page and have labels for them. The hero, the mentor, the ally, the orphan. To me, those are labels, not character. They don't really bring too much in terms of descriptive detail with them. You still need to do the work, and you've got to develop the character. Now, if those labels help you, that's good. But I'm going to give you some other options to look at here. And the first one, we'll start with the spiritual. David Corbett wrote The Art of Character, and one of the things in his book was when you're done writing for the day and you're working on a character, jot down some ideas on what that character does, what they are, what they're feeling, what they're doing, and put it away, and literally sleep on it. David believes that your unconscious mind will continue to work on that character overnight, and then when you get up in the morning, jot down the ideas again, and you might have some change. Very simple, but it's a little too much let the cosmos figure it out for me. I have control issues, and and I would be like this guy and not be able to sleep because I'd be worried about where my character's going to go. Now, when you're talking about personality traits, personality is kind of that bag of what this person thinks, their thoughts, their beliefs, their mental qualities or deficits, and how that makes them react to situations. They could have a bubbly disposition. They could be nervous all the time. They could, have a self-deprecating sense of humor that kind of gets in the way sometimes for them. Those are the kinds of things you'd be looking for as as personality traits. And to give you an idea, and then this is going to be hard to read, so we'll just walk through it and you'll have the PDFs to look at it. Are they fond of attention? Are they curious to learn more? Do they keep it to themselves? How big of a role does fear play in their day-to-day activities? I mean, if you're looking at fond of attention, where does Hannibal Lecter fit in that? He loves the attention. Does the character react if things don't go well? How does McMurtry react in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? When the other patient dies. Does he think he's more intelligent or less intelligent than others around them? Does the character think they're average, and how would they define average? Where do they fit in their world? How do they feel about making decisions? Could they be kind of decisive or kind of hang back and let the world unfold around them? Do they make decisions quickly, and do they tend to regret the decisions once they've made them? So those are all kinds of ideas that you'd look for if you're looking for personality traits. Now, to me, that gives you characteristics, but not character. So it's not quite deep enough yet. It might help you. But one of the other methods that's talked about often is basically interviewing your character or having them respond to a questionnaire. Now, this one isn't bad because it makes you think about your character in a different way. Is your character too perfect? Perfection is boring. Nobody wants to read about a perfect character. There's no story there. There's no change. Readers really demand that characters have some kind of fault or weakness, because that's where the real emotion of the story comes in. And on the vice versa of that, are your characters all bad? I've fallen trapped to this when I'm writing and drafting a character, my antagonist. I've left them with no redeeming qualities at all. Even Darth Vader had something to offer towards the end of his on-screen career. And Hannibal Lecter had some vulnerability when dealing with Clarice. So you can't have a character that's so flat that it's all bad. The movie, I think Gladiator, with Russell Crowe, the Roman emperor was played by Joaquin Phoenix, Commodus, and that character kind of went this route. All bad, nothing redeeming. And that was probably one of the biggest criticisms of that movie, was that character was just unbelievably flat and awful. So it's something to think of. Now, are they human? Now, if you're like Margie and you write cat books, you're going to have some human qualities, that you apply to those cats or those non-human things. Think of Animal Farm and George Orwell. All of those animals took on human characteristics, and it made you get into the characters a little bit more. So do the characters grow? There's your transitional arc that you're looking for in the book. Do they have goals? What are those goals? Are they achievable or just unrealistic? Do your characters make mistakes? We all make mistakes. So you want to show your characters at least having a little bit of trouble, as they go through life in your book. Are they believable in their world? Whatever world you're creating, they have to at least fit in that. Then have you describe your character. This is an important one, and I think you're going to hear about that in the next speaker, and all these sensory elements that are going to come into your book. They're very important. And description is part of that, but you can go overboard and give an info dump for 5 pages about your character's description that really doesn't move the plot forward. And depending on what genre you're writing in, you're expected to do more or less. If you're writing romance, you're going to have more description in there than anything. You're going to want to describe the boyfriend's eyes and hair, his abs, and all this kind of stuff. Where in an action adventure, you're probably not going to need that. So it really depends on what it is you write. And then, is your character vulnerable? All characters should have some vulnerability. Even Superman had his kryptonite. So you're looking for that one thing that makes them, at least, even if they're trying to protect that and not let other people know what it is, they have it. And you as an author can use that to kind of help flesh out that character. Okay. Now, motivation. I found this one a little bit deeper dive for me, and it helped because it's all about the big why of what our characters do and why they do what they do. It's all about the actions and decisions that character is going to make on the pages of your book, because each time they do something, a bit of their personality is revealed. You don't do it all at once, but every decision, you're going to see a little bit more about this guy. For example, if you were writing a cozy and your amateur sleuth finds a body in their cupcake shop, as they often do apparently, why aren't they just calling the police? What's the reason that they're doing this, solving this on their own? Now that's usually a part of the cozy world, but you need to at least think about that when you're doing the character. What is it why wouldn't they call the police and have the authorities take care of this? And the reverse of that, a detective, if you're writing a detective series, can't just go solve the crime because it's their job. There has to be some sense of justice that they're trying to look for. So some of the major motivations are power. It could be a lust for power or trying to regain it. Control, whether they've lost it, or trying to maintain it. Could be a betrayed husband or a wife, a bullied assistant. That power dynamic is an important characteristic that you're going to look for in your characters. Fear is another big one. Fear is one we used with Black Label. At Book Passage, we were teaching a session, and it had to do with character motivation. And one of the most common things that the writers in that group had was using fear. And there's something that everybody, no matter who you are, there's something that you're afraid of. And I wanted to use Jillian Cooper in Black Label, and fear is a big motivator for her in that book. So I went back after that session and started writing some of the early passages of Black Label. We'll talk a little bit more about Jillian's journey in a bit here, but fear is a big one. Passion, naturally. They want something, and what would they do to get it? And then revenge, of course. They've been wronged, and they want to recover from that. Other motivation factors, we talked about justice a little bit. Justice is going to be different depending on the character. Justice for a mafia enforcer is going to be different than justice for the Lincoln lawyer, defense attorney. Their sense of justice is going to be different. Protecting someone else, they can be motivated by that. Covering up the crime is always worse than the crime itself. So that's something else to think of. Covering up their past, that's a huge one, because everything they do, they've got to keep those lies that they've been telling consistent. So where in that web of life they're weaving have they let people down? And naturally, money is always a big issue. Protecting their reputation, falsely accused, they want to kind of reveal their character and how they respond to that. So that's one method. But the method I want to talk about next is a little different because it adds a visual piece to it. And I know you can't read this, we'll walk through it. It's called the onion method. It was developed by Martin Turner. He's a UK author. And his thoughts were characters are compelling not because of the fact that they're real characters, but the impact they have on us as readers. Because the human mind will make do with whatever you give it. You don't have to paint a complete picture. But the character and the story determines the order in which it's told and the character is revealed. And that's a little bit different because he thought that no matter how the characters or people really exist, the way we experience them is in layers. So it kind of helps to have a visual on character because it helps you think of how to reveal it and how deeply you're going to dive into it. So in terms of the onion model, from the inside out, you've got the inner self. You've got motivation is then that blue line. I'll use my cat toy. Then values and priorities. Then what you do, what you say, that ring. And then the outer ring is reputation. And we'll dive into each one of those and what they say and what the little dialogue says there, so you don't have to write that down. Starting from the outside, reputation is how others describe you. It could be two people talking about a third in a room. And if you think about it, a lot of our interactions in the real world are kind of just that. We're very surface talking about things, and we'll talk about, that person over there has, this on, or they're doing that kind of thing. It tells us the least about the character and probably the least reliable information you're going to get. The next layer to that is what they say, and that's to inform, educate, entertain, conceal, or reveal. So it brings us closer to the truth of that character, but not reliably so, because, and you know this from writing, that your characters are going to use dialogue to conceal as much as they do to reveal. And they're going to try to impress people rather than express the truth. And sometimes it's just to fill the silence. So it's not a complete picture of who your character is. The next line down is what characters do, what I do. The character, it's closer to what the real character is, because as you've heard, actions speak louder than words. This is an example of that. Particularly in unconscious actions, and your narrative can kind of move easily between dialogue and action in expressing that. Values and priorities are closer to the heart of character, but telling the reader what the values are comes off as a little clunky sometimes. It almost is like an info dump of values. It's usually shown by what they choose to do when it's not easy, or what they wear, or what they buy, or who they will save when they're in danger. Motivation, I really like this thought here. Motivation is concealed in words and revealed in pattern. That said a lot to me. It's because you'll only have the truth in these little moments that expose their values and priorities. So it's how you dive into that to get that character. And then finally, the inner one, the inner self, the center core on your onion. You may never actually expose all of that. A lot of authors don't. They might dangle it out there and describe their character as, a sociopathic, I'm thinking of Lecter, sociopathic psychiatrist who likes to eat people. But that will probably never be directly exposed in your character, but you know it as an author, and you're writing around that. So it just kind of used that onion theory as an example. I took the main character in Black Label, Jillian Cooper. Now, on the reputation level, she's a successful pharmaceutical exec. She's devoted to the company, gets the job done, but others whisper that she slept her way to the top. Now, what she says, early on in the book, we're not revealing any plot here really, she denies any knowledge of the murder. She defends the attacks on her reputation. And going a little bit deeper here, what she does is she ends up hiding evidence, returns to the scene of the crime, and goes on the run. But that doesn't tell you all of the story. Her values and priorities, she devoted herself to the job. She's one of those people that really sacrificed her personal life for the job. She had very much tunnel vision into that. She wants to know the truth, even if it means she's a killer or she's gone insane and doesn't remember the crime. But at the same time, she wants to release a new HIV drug to the third world. So she's got a lot of different values and priorities in her life.
Jim, when you do something like that, like a deep dive into that character, did you do that before you wrote the book? Why don't you go back through the book and look at the pieces and make this list?
Good question. Did everybody hear that? Do we do a deep dive first or go back and go in? Actually, it was a little both. For Jillian's character, I am not a woman, so I had to incorporate some of those things from experiences out there, just observing people and being around people. I wrote it, and I had to go back and add some more things in. But what helped me do that, I wrote a short story of Jillian in first person, so I could get a better feel for her voice and her, I guess, her position, her authority, her agency, in this world. And it involved a board meeting. So here she is, the only woman board member, this old boys club of pharmaceutical execs, and that story kind of helped me figure out where she was. So it's kind of a mixture of both. There was some going back and tightening it up and diving a little deeper, but getting the story out and get it to fit together at the end. Yeah. So in terms of Jillian's motivation, she has to know if she's following her mother's pattern of mental illness, because we mentioned that. She wants to clear her name and cares for others in her journey, even though she's in a fight to survive and save her own life. And then her inner self, I think, can be characterized as a lot of fear, like we mentioned, anxiety, and the will to survive, but she wants to make a difference in the world. And that's kind of a little conflict for her. Now, back to the diagram of the onion. I'm not sure you can see it very well on the wall, but there are these arrows. Okay? The arrows represent scenes or events and how you reveal the character. So you don't just jump in and just do a dump on everything that Jillian believes or how she feels or everything all at once. That's going to turn people off. So what these are different events and how they might reveal character. And some are glancing blows and some cut pretty deep. But in these, like the top arrow here, it intersects with the reputation level and what she says level. This could be the scene early in the book where Jillian is confronted by the police detective, and for the first time, and she's not sure what to reveal. I mean, she's just discovered her boss is dead and there's blood on her clothes, and she doesn't know what to say, what to do. She's defending her reputation from these sniping attacks in the office, but it's a little bit difficult for her to get any deeper on that. Now the bottom arrow cuts a little bit deeper. Reputation, what she says, and what she does. And that unveils her actions a little bit. Things are hard to conceal and hard to interpret on their own. For example, she destroyed evidence of a crime. Well, why did she do that? She wants to find out if she's a murderer, for starts. She doesn't know. But she's not doing it to get away with the crime. She just needs more time to figure out what's going on in her life. And she's got other interactions with people in the book that just cut a little bit deeper, but not to that degree. And with our soundtrack, we have the center line, because it's very dramatic, cuts to the core of Jillian's values and priority and motivation. What Jillian does when it's not easy. She could just simply run away and disappear. Or when she discovers something a little fishy in the pharmacy industry. It would have been easy for her to just walk away, but that's not who she is. The motivational layer conceals the words, and reveals a pattern. So over time, over the course of the book, you see more and more interactions with Jillian, with others, that start to show she's changed since the beginning of the book, where she was, almost afraid and about to go on the run, and then she decided, she's got to reclaim her life and then kind of take it over, and her character comes out that way. So, I know we've got a lot of information we've thrown at you, but there's more than one way to skin a character, and I think you'll have fun doing that. This one I liked because it gets you the character, but it's kind of visual, and we all learn different ways. Sometimes you're right, and that kinesthetic learning, makes things sink in a little bit. Visually, you can look at a character a little bit differently, and it makes much more sense. But that's where we're at. So I'll open it up to questions, and then if we have time, we've got some trivia, so we can do that. Yes?
On your last slide, the onion peel slide and the arrows, am I to understand correctly, there is a story for the top arrow that just incorporates those two elements. The second one down incorporates a whole lot of this, and that's in a story somewhere within the book, is that?
Yeah, I think it would be safe to say that each of those arrows would be depicted in at least a scene or two.
Okay.
And it depends how deeply Jillian dove into that particular event. The top arrow, again, could be a very superficial greeting, like or a first-time meeting with the police detective in that case. She's just figured out she's in the middle of something very bad. She doesn't know what it is yet. She's reluctant to say anything to the police to get her incriminated in that crime. She wants to find out more. So she's kind of holding back a little bit. So that's kind of what that top arrow. Bottom one, again, is a little deeper. More going on. She's more of what she's doing is revealed. So it's a little bit deeper dive into her character at that point.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes?
I'm wondering, is your character development good or bad? How much does it come from real people? And I'm kind of bouncing that off the fact that you have had a great deal of experience with convicts.
The question was, I just want to make sure everybody can hear it. How much of the character development comes from personal experience? I think with all of us, I think that's going to always be a piece of it. We can sit in Starbucks and just listen to interactions and watch people, and you can pick up some good dialogue there, that's for sure. But yeah, I've been fortunate to be able to dive back into that world because I write, thrillers and crime fiction, and that's kind of where those people live. So it's kind of given me a jump start into their motivation and that dark world that they live in. I didn't have to go and find out some other way. So that's definitely a piece of it. I think any of us can write that stuff. Just might take a little different detour to get there, more research maybe, or more exposure to those worlds. But yeah, I think it definitely helped me. Yes?
I just want to provide some feedback
Mm-hmm.
to see if I'm correct. I see this as a measurement tool. I do not write novels. I write more academia and truth and science fact.
Okay.
So I'm trying to experiment on writing a novel.
Okay.
And much of what you've talked about gives a template to measure oneself. You've captured everything, and I see this as somewhat of a flow chart to some degree because it has movement. And when you want to describe something that's significant and important to the writer, one would maybe measure themselves against this template to see if you've captured everything.
Okay.
Am I correct?
You could use it that way.
That's how I see it.
Because I'm thinking, as you were describing that, you could use this as like a checklist when you were done.
Right.
And let's say it's a short story, or it could be a novel. It'd be a little bit more complicated, but you know where those key scenes are in your book and those key plot points.
That's right. That's right.
Did you, in the course of writing that book, get deep enough into that character, or is everything superficial?
Right, no, I see that.
Mhm.
I see it as a flow chart,
Yeah,
process flow chart.
yeah, very much. You could use it that way.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
And I like the fact that you said it's a character versus plot. Because I think one gets stuck when we're creating something.
Yeah, the labels out there in the industry, character driven. What does that really mean? It doesn't tell you how to get there and how to deep dive into that.
That's excellent, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
So is it safe to say that plot can change throughout the book, but the story has to have a beginning, a middle, and end, and characters, of course, change throughout too, but plot can change?
Plot can change, and I think those of you who aren't, strict plotters, I think you've seen that as you're writing, that you come up with another avenue to go because your characters are telling you something. They want to go do this, and maybe that's not what you plotted. A friend of mine, JT Ellison, she subscribes by 40 scenes. You write out on 3x5 cards, 40 scenes. Just a couple of sentences, and there's your book. I like JT. She writes, amazing thrillers. I did that for the sequel to Dead Drop, just to see if I could do it. Got my 40 cards. Then I started to write it. Any guess on how many cards in until the whole thing just blew up? First card. First card. I knew that just from seeing the story and knowing who the characters were that I was going to do, this wasn't going to go that way. They kind of helped me keep track of where the story was going, but one card in and I was off the path. Yes?
Okay, we raised a foster kid who turned out to be a psychopath and died in jail. And we thought it was a learning disability because he could not comprehend the difference between right and wrong, truth and a lie. He couldn't love people. He liked some better than others. How can you portray a character like that so that the readers could understand it?
Yeah. Yeah, how do you portray a character like that? And I think you just did.
Yeah, you did.
You just said it. It's exactly because none of us in this room, I'm thinking, are experiencing those kinds of psychopathic ideals. So you have to describe it in characteristics that make sense to you. So an inability to love. Some relationships are worth more than others, and it's all this economy and trade kind of thing. I think that's how you describe it. It just has to make sense to you and the reader. It doesn't have to be clinically correct and that kind of thing, but it just has to make sense to you. And I think you did a good job of that.
Do you have characters like that in your books?
Yeah, sure do. Yeah, some of them were based on people that I knew. Yes?
On the right-hand side there, information, how we reveal events and actions.
Uh-huh.
But knowing that you were going to come, I read one of your books, and I wanted to compliment you on revealing character in dialogue. You haven't mentioned dialogue at all here, but in this particular case, the policeman's son is kidnapped by the sociopath, and the policeman's boss says, "We'll find him, he's one of our family." So the character of that police lieutenant is revealed in just the fact that he says, he's one of our family. It's not like, look at the FBI.
Right.
But I just wanted to compliment you. I think you did a great job of revealing character in dialogue.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, dialogue is actually this second line here, the what I say line. But it's not always true. You can have characters lie. You can have characters, not tell the whole truth. And that's in that general area. But thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. Yes?
I really enjoyed Julian's journey in your book, Black Label. What struck me so much about her character was that until pretty basically the end, and I won't give away anything. She was totally alone. She was absolutely and totally alone. There was nobody that she could depend on or came to her defense or anything. How did you think of developing? How did you, being a man and having to write a woman character, how did you come up with this?
Yeah, it did kind of come out of a session at the Book Passage Mystery Writers Conference where we sat around and talked about it. And fear was a big thing. And what would be fearful to a woman pharmaceutical exec? You know, and isolation. You know, you're being torn away from the job and your life, basically. So yeah, she is alone. She's unsure about a lot of things. I don't want to go into too much about it, but yeah, fear was a big motivator. And in terms of getting her character right, I rely on a lot of good people around me to help make sure I keep those voices correct. And you know, my wife is one. You know, a woman would never say this. A mother would never say this about a kid. And I think most of my beta readers are women. My agent's a woman. My editor's a woman. So they keep me in check when I need to. And that's important. You need to have beta readers that will actually be honest with you and tell you, you know, the ugly truth. Sometimes it can be, you know, told softly, but yeah, you need to know. Questions? Margie?
I have a question. You have written so many books, as you can see on the table back there. What's your process? How long does it take you to get like the first draft? And then how many revisions do you normally go through to have the final?
Yeah, I think what you're going to find is your process changes over time too. I think each book, I hope, is getting better and better. The process changes. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm not a strict plotter. I'm not a strict pantser. I'm kind of a hybrid in the middle. I'm a gardener. You know, a plot thing goes off over here, I'll clip that off. You know, just stay on the path. But in terms of my process, I write just about every day. Probably about 3 to 4 hours on the actual writing piece. And then the afternoons will be, you know, the business side of it, marketing and that kind of thing. First drafts will take about 4 months. Then I put it in a drawer and let it ferment for at least a month before I look at it again, because it does help to get that fresh eyes back at it again. I would probably do 3 or 4 more revisions before anybody else sees it. And some of it could be for just tone, for doing that deeper dive into character like we talked about, and those issues. Then it'll go out to beta readers, agents, editors, you know, that kind of thing. So all said and done, it takes about 8 months to get the novel out to where it needs to be. And then the publisher takes, you know, their time with it. It's usually close to another 8 months after that. Any other questions on that? Yes?
When you have an inciting incident right up front, and anybody that edits says you've got to have that right in the beginning to hold the reader so they'll continue to read. How do you decide how much of that you want to reveal, as opposed to, do you reveal the whole thing? I know you didn't in this novel that you're talking about, but do you reveal the whole thing and have the reader follow along with the protagonist and try to solve things? Or do you stop short of giving the game away and then let the readers be interested enough to find out what happened?
Good question. Just to make sure you heard that. How far do you go in that inciting incident? Do you reveal everything, hold something back? And how do you get the reader to kind of follow you with that? I do believe that inciting incidents right up front, at least for the kind of things that I write, that's kind of what the industry wants to see. And you don't have to show the crime. You don't have to, you're dealing like a police detective coming onto the scene. That could be how it opens. Or in Black Label, we have Jillian's story starting, but we certainly don't tell all of it. We see what she's seeing, but not completely. And you're planting enough seeds in there that you're leaving questions in the reader's minds that they want to answer. So you want them to kind of go with you for the rest of the story. That's a good question. I like that. Yeah, I like doing it that way. Yes?
So can you open the book with a scene that is, I'll say riveting, okay? But as you go along, it really has nothing to do with the story.
That's very common.
Does that trick the reader? Is that not a nice thing?
That's a very common thing about having an incident start the story, and then as you're writing it, you realize that doesn't fit anymore. What we've seen with a lot of new authors and aspiring authors is you're not starting the book in the right place. So it's helpful to write it out that way, but as you go back to revise it, you realize that those first 2 chapters, you don't even need, or if you do, it's just this much of it, just to set a tone or an event, one inciting incident. You don't need all of that other information. It might just distract from the story you're trying to tell. But yeah, that's very, very common, very common. Any other questions on that? Okay, then, well, now, thank you. These slides will be in the back, or not be in the back, but there's a sign-up sheet. Give me your email address and that kind of thing. I'll get the PDF out to you so you can look at it and make paper airplanes or whatever you want to do. Dead Drop, as Margie mentioned, thank you, is coming out in July. If you liked Jillian's story in Black Label, you'll really like this one because it involves a couple of good characters. So with that, want to play some trivia?
Sure.
Can I ask Anne Marie to give us some answer sheets here? Just, scribble. If you need a pen, we've got some pencils, that kind of thing. Just a quick little 10-question trivia thing for us. It'll be fun. Yes?
I was just going to say how much crime writing has changed. I'm too lazy to learn all the TV channels, so I've been watching Murder, She Wrote.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. Everywhere Jessica goes, somebody dies.
Oh, I don't want to live in Cabot Cove. No.
But there's never any violence. I mean, she just takes them and they just willingly go to the police
Yep.
with her. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yep. Yeah, it's fun. It really does change. There's so many subgenres now of crime fiction. You've got domestic suspense. You've got all kinds of things that weren't even on the map, just a few months ago. These won't be all too challenging. They'll make you think a little bit.
Yeah.
So we're going to do a mixture of Black Label trivia, crime fiction, and true crime stuff. Everybody have an answer sheet? Ready to go?
Yeah.
Okay. First question then. According to the World Health Organization, what is the most commonly counterfeited drug? A, antibiotics, B, opioids, C, diet pills, or D, erectile dysfunction drugs? Okay. You okay with that one? Moving on? Okay. Number 2. The Department of Homeland Security reports counterfeit prescription drugs were seized in 2020 were valued over $500 billion. Who are the major manufacturers of counterfeit drugs? A, Jeff Bezos. B, small hacker labs. C, organized crime. Or D, unregulated pharmaceutical companies. Okay. Number 3, according to the World Health Organization, how many people die each year from counterfeit drugs?
Too many.
A, 10,000, B, 100,000, C, 500,000, or D, 1 million?
Is that in the US or the world?
World.
Okay.
You ready for number 4?
Yep.
Now we're going to get into Sacramento crime here. Which infamous Sacramento killer used explosives to murder his victims? A, Joseph D'Angelo, B, JCX Simon, C, Ted Kaczynski, or D, Tamerlan Tsarnaev? Okay. Which notorious Sacramento serial killer was motivated by profit? A. Joseph D'Angelo, B. Dorothea Puente, C. Richard Trenton Chase, or D. Roger Kibbe? Okay. Number 6. Which serial killing duo drove a vehicle they called the murder van in commission of their 5 killings? A. Gerald and Charlene Gallegos, B. Angelo Bono and Kenneth Bianchi, C. Roy Norris and Lawrence Bittaker, or D. Gregory Powell and Jimmy Lee Smith? Okay. All right. A little prison slang for you here. Number 7. In prison slang, what is shotgun money? It's A, money given to a paroling inmate, B, money earned through extortion, C, money to pay off a drug debt, or D, money paid to a gang for protection. Okay?
Read them again.
Read them again. A, money given to a paroling inmate, B, money earned through extortion, C, money to pay off a drug debt, or D, money paid to a gang for protection. Okay. Oops. Number 8, in prison slang, what is sounding the bars? Sounding the bars is A, yelling through the cell bars, B, a snitch listening to other inmates' conversation, C, when an officer runs a baton across the cell bars, or D, slow cutting of the cell bars.
Slow what?
Cutting. All right, number 9. The Nevada State Prison is famous for this deadly first. A, the first electric chair. B, the first warden killed during an escape attempt. C, the first gas chamber execution. Or D, the first deadly cell block riot. Okay. Number 10, and this is just to see if you were paying attention. Which of the following is not used to develop character? A, the onion method, B, the rutabaga theory, C, motivation, or D, personality traits? If anybody misses this, we're going to talk.
Can you read A again? Number 1 again.
And this, on the bottom of your score sheet, this is a tiebreaker if we need it. Since 1893, there have been 513 inmates executed in California. How many were women? Just write that number down on the bottom of your page.
Wait a minute, can you repeat?
Since 1893, there have been 513 inmates executed in California. How many were women?
Okay.
And you wanted me to read number 1 again?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not going to use the cat toy for this. I'm just going to go back. Number 1 was, according to the World Health Organization, what is the most commonly counterfeited drug? A, antibiotics, B, opioids, D, diet pills, or C, diet pills, or D, erectile dysfunction drugs. Okay. So are we ready then?
Yeah.
Since you're all trustworthy, we won't pass papers or any of that kind of stuff. Okay. And since we're on number 1, according to the World Health Organization, the most commonly counterfeited drug is A, antibiotics. Particularly in third world countries. Number 2, Department of Homeland Security reports counterfeit prescription drugs were valued at over $500 billion. Who manufactured? As much as I wanted it to be Jeff Bezos, it's C, organized crime. Middle East terrorist organizations in particular, like Hezbollah, huge into counterfeit drug market. Number 3, according to the World Health Organization, how many people die each year from counterfeit drugs? D, 1 million. Okay, number 4, this infamous Sacramento killer used explosives. That's C, Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. He hit twice in Sacramento. Number 5, the notorious Sacramento killer was motivated by profit. That's B, Dorothea Puente, the F Street boarding house. We doing okay back there? Okay. Number 6, which serial killing duo drove a vehicle they called the murder van that commissioned their killings? That's C, Roy Norris and Lawrence Bittaker, the toolbox killers. Number 7, prison slang. What is shotgun money? That's A, money given to a paroling inmate.
Yes.
It used to be, that was enough money to get you a shotgun and a load of heroin, and you can go off and do your business again. Number 8, in prison slang, what is sounding the bars? That's C, when an officer runs a baton across the cell bars. When the bars are cut, they make a different sound. So when you see that in movies, it's not just to intimidate the convicts. It makes a different sound when the bars have been tampered with. Now you know.
Interesting.
Number 9, Nevada State Prison is famous for this deadly first. C, the first gas chamber execution. And they had to do it twice because they forgot to seal the door the first time. Yeah, so the staff passed out and the inmate was fine. So they had to do it again.
That's funny.
And number 10, which of the following is not used to develop character? There we go. B, the rutabaga theory. And the tiebreaker question, should we need it. We'll hold that back and see what we get. So, how many people got 10? 9? 8?
There's no criminals in this room.
I'm feeling more comfortable already. Let's see, 7? We got a 7?
That's 7 wrong.
6? We got a 6? Okay, we got 2 6s? All right, Anne-Marie, could you, Anne-Marie's got some bookmarks for you, some jewelry-made bookmarks.
Your career as a crime writer is not threatened by anyone in the
Yeah. But we do have 2 who are now the most likely to become a felon. Yeah. So our tiebreaker, which we're not even going to invoke, you're co-winners. How many people, what was your guess on the number of women executed in California? 2, 1, 0, 0, 2, 4. 4. The last one was in the 60s, but it's been 4.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that's all I have for you today, but thanks so much for having me back. I hope it was good for you. Thank you.